Herzlich willkommen, meine Lieben, zu einer Jubiläumsfolge und zwar zur 50. Folge hier beim Image Sales Podcast. Und diese Folge wird in jeglicher Hinsicht eine besondere sein. Erstens, es ist meine erste englischsprachige Folge, denn mein Interviewgast ist aus Amerika. Und zwar stelle ich euch heute Geshe Roach vor. Ich bin ganz ehrlich, ich bin weder ein religiöser noch spiritueller Mensch, doch ich habe aus den Lehren des Buddhismus in der letzten Zeit so unfassbar viel für das Management meiner Unternehmen gelernt, dass ich euch das in keinster Weise vorenthalten möchte. Dieser Mann hat etwas erreicht, wovon die meisten Unternehmer da draußen träumen. Und das auf eine Art und Weise, was im wahrsten Sinne des Wortes konträr ist zu jeder existierenden Managementmethode, die wir jemals in unserem Leben kennengelernt haben. Und deswegen möchte ich euch einladen in die nächste wahnsinnig spannende Stunde mit einem Mann, der 25 Jahre im buddhistischen Kloster verbracht hat und diese Lehre ins Management übertragen hat und damit mehrere Millionen Dollar Umsatz im Jahr erzielt hat. Und wie genau das funktioniert und wie ihr das für euch und euer Unternehmen implementieren könnt, darüber sprechen wir in der nächsten Stunde. Ich freue mich sehr, wenn du dabei bleibst und schreib mit, denn es lohnt sich an der Stelle. Bis gleich.
Image Sales, der Podcast für Unternehmen, die Alternativen zur Akquise suchen. Jede Woche gibt es hier neue Impulse und Strategien, mit denen das Unternehmensimage zur Marke aufgebaut wird, sodass es in Zukunft heißt, gebeten zu werden statt zu bitten von Investoren, Kunden und potenziellen Mitarbeitern. Ich bin Carmen Brablec, Marken-Strategin aus Leidenschaft. Auf geht's!
So I warmly welcome you, Geshe Michael, today on our show here, which is a very special show for me and also for my audience because we have an anniversary episode today.
Cool.
Yeah. So thank you that you took your time, especially now in so shortly before we end the year. And before we start introducing you to our audience today, I have a question. What means image for you in regards of branding for companies?
I think when you say branding, to me, it means how other people perceive you, and how other people perceive your company. And we believe that all of that is also coming from seeds in your own mind. So you can affect the branding of your company by learning how to change the seeds in your own mind.
Absolutely. Today is something so special for me because what we're going to talk about is so contrary to every existing theory in economics so far we were talking on the show or at all. And I'm, to be honest, I'm nervous. I don't know if you can hear this, because I was so delighted by what I read in your book and what I read about everything of your theory and the intention you have. And so this is something very extraordinary we're going to talk about and introduce our audience to, because the persons who listen to this show, they expect methods and strategies and also hands-on experience from experts like you are, how to be visible and to be attractive to as a brand, as a service company brand, actually, for their new customers, employees, and also investors. So this is something I want to give them, my audience, that they learn how to do things different than before, not to struggle anymore to get, the peer group they want to address to. Before we jump into the topic, I would like you to tell our audience a little bit about your background. Who are you, and how come that that Karmic management got that topic that you are talking about today?
Yeah, good. So I was born in the United States, not a very rich family, in a small city. And then I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to Princeton University. And I think in the third year that I was there, my mother got quite ill. And so I was looking for answers about that. And I met a young man from India in one of my classes. And he said, you should try to go to India and meet the people in the Himalayas. And so I went, and I did meet some Tibetan monks there. And in time, I came to stay in a Tibetan monastery. I studied for almost 30 years total. And, there are some very great examinations. There are 3,000 monks in my monastery, and the examinations are very strict after the course. The course takes 25 years and for a Geshe. And so they have a 3-week examination, oral examinations in public in a debate format. And then after the examinations I passed, I was the first Westerner in my monastery in about 600 years. And then my teacher, who was a very unusual Lama, encouraged me he said, now you should have a practical examination. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, you should go to New York City and start a business and prove that you understand karma.
Wow.
And so I resisted it because I was very happy in the monastery. And but I did go, and we started a company with 3 people, and we started a diamond jewelry company, and that became the largest diamond jewelry company in the world. It was bought by Warren Buffett in 2009, and in my opinion, it comes from the techniques that I learned in the monastery. Mm-hmm. At some point, the New York Times asked me, it was one of the fastest growing companies in the history of New York City. We doubled every 18 months for many years. And they asked me to write a book about it. And so, I did write a book with Doubleday Corporation. And that book, The Diamond Cutter, became a global bestseller. And so because of that book, then people have asked me all over the world to come and visit. And I think now we go to about 35 cities around the world every year, and we speak to about 30,000 people a year about how to be successful using these principles.
That's amazing. That's true. So actually you build up a completely new way of leadership.
Yeah. And, it was a struggle because my teacher basically handed me an ancient sutra, which is called the Diamond Cutter Sutra. It's 2,500 years old. And he said, this is going to be your business plan. And I said, well, I don't see any business plan in here. And he has said, well, that's the examination. And that's the way he was. He was a very high Lama and very, sort of full of surprises. And he would just throw things like that at me. And so that's how we started.
So how can I imagine this? You just jump on the plane, go to New York City, plenty of money in your pocket, and buy a business in the diamond industry, which is totally easy to enter. Or how did it work in real life?
I had $7.
Oh,
and I went to the Goodwill, which is where they sell the clothes of the dead people in America. Mm-hmm. And I bought one suit, and I wore that suit for about the first 3-4 months. And we started, we borrowed $50,000. We started with 3 diamonds. And, by the time we finished, we were handling 300,000 diamonds a day. And we had bought a large building in New York. It's in the New York skyline. And we just started like that with 3 people and $7.
So you said you sold the company. Could you tell us for how much you sold it?
The company, by the time we finished, was $250 million a year in turnover. Yeah. The sale is, I can't tell you, but the company that bought it is called Richline.
Okay.
They're still operating the company. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So just just to have numbers for the ones listening who need numbers to justify something they're going to work with. Because we're talking about business, and this is pretty crucial in this field. So that's what makes this whole topic, I find, even more amazing. At the very beginning, you were talking about planting the seed when I just asked you about image. There are two, well, actually three, but just take the two words you were talking in your book a lot about: karma and about emptiness. Could you explain us these two words in terms of how important they are for the whole theory?
Yeah, I think I know when the first time I heard the word emptiness, it was very mysterious to me, and it called up, TV shows where I had seen kung fu monks closing their eyes and going into some black space and then coming out and defeating their enemy in a match. And this was my impression of emptiness. And I imagine for your listeners, it may be what they think of. The way I like to teach it, because it's an extremely powerful business principle, the way I like to talk about it is with an example we used at British Airways when we trained them. We trained some of the vice presidents there. And they asked me, can you just give a normal example? So I said, I held up a pen and I said, I'll ask you questions, you give me answers. This is the ancient method of teaching. And like the same with Socrates. And so I held up the pen and I said, what is this thing? And they said, pen. And then I said, well, if a dog comes in here and they look at this thing, what will they see? And then they said, oh, maybe they will chew on it. They'll see a chew toy, And then I said, well, who's correct, the dog or the human? And they said, well, if you think about it, both are correct. The human can write with it, and that's not a problem. And the dog can chew on it, and that's not a problem. Probably the human is irritated that the dog chews on the pen. And probably the dog is, irritated that the human can't appreciate the taste. But really, they're both correct. And then what they do in the monastery, for 2,000 years, they will set the pen down on the table. And they'll say, well, suppose the dog leaves the room, and then suppose the human leaves the room. Then when there's no one in the room and the pen is sitting on the table, well, which one is it? Is it a pen or is it a chew toy? And then, I've given this example thousands of times around the world, and people will have the same reaction. They just sort of shake their head and say nothing. And that's the real meaning of emptiness. Now, how to use that to be a success in business or to have successful branding is very cool. And then you say, well, what happens if the human walks back in the room? Then what does that object on the table become? And, people will naturally say, well, it becomes a pen. And then if you say, but if the dog comes in first and they look at the object on the table, what will it become? And then, they'll say, of course, it becomes a chew toy. And then when you teach it right away, you have to ask quickly, well, then does that pen or that chew toy come from the human or the dog, or does it come from the object? You see, does the pen come from the thing on the table, or does the pen come from the mind of the observer? And everybody in the world at that moment will say, well, it must be coming from the person. If it became a chew toy when the dog came back in, and if it became a pen when the human came back in, then somehow it must be coming from the mind of the observer. And then I think when we teach it, we'd like to talk about wrong ideas about, that we're not talking about, which is positive thinking. Like it's not that the human comes back in the room and thinks positively, and then the pen becomes a pen or something like that. So what we're not teaching and what we're not trying to train people to do is positive thinking. Rather, I think there's something in the human's mind. There's something inside the human's mind which is forcing them to see a pen. They don't really have a choice. They can't say, I'd like to see a diamond this afternoon. If this is coming from me, I'd rather see a diamond. It doesn't work that way. And we all know that. So we're not trying to say that it's a matter of positive thinking, or you should, imagine what you want and it will be attracted to you, or something like that. I think at that moment, we can all understand that the pen is coming somehow from me, but I'm being forced to see a pen. It's not that I have a choice. And then the lamas, when they teach it, it's a very beautiful moment in the monastery, in your 25 years of training, when they say, it's coming from a seed in your mind. And when the human steps back in the room and they look at this object, then the seed in the mind cracks open, and a tiny image of a pen comes out of that seed and presents itself to the mind. And then we see a pen. And if you are in a monastery, Tibetan monastery, a major monastery, and you meditate for many years, then you can actually watch a seed open in your mind. So then it becomes something you can observe is really happening inside your mind. Normally we say that they open at the rate of 65 per second. So it's like a very fast video, and images are flowing out of your mind so quickly that the whole world doesn't notice it their whole lifetime. They go through a whole lifetime without noticing that tiny images are being spewed out of their mind and creating the world around them. But if you slow down and talk about a pen and a dog, I think almost anyone will say, well, that, I don't know if it's true, but it could be true that there are seeds in my mind, and that the dog has a different seed in their mind, and that, these images are coming out of seeds in your mind. So it's not a big jump then to say, well, if it's true of a pen, then it must be true of the table, and it must be true of the room, and it could even be true of Carmen Brablec interviewing you on the coming from your mind. And then the big question, thousands of people every year that we help, that we talk to in these programs, sometimes 3,000 people at a time. The big question is, how do you plant those seeds? Could you plant those seeds purposely? And could you design 2019 in your business? Could you design what you see in your business? Because what you see is real. You see, the pen may be coming from my mind, but it still writes on a piece of paper. So then the question becomes, how do you plant these seeds? And then we train people. There's an ancient teaching. In fact, I was working on it yesterday. It's 2,000 years old, and it's called Abhidharma. And there are 4 steps, classical steps to planting a seed. And I think in our experience, when business people learn them, they take off, their businesses take off, and they make millions and millions of dollars. And, and it's quite satisfying for me to share this with people. And then they come back to me in a year. I'm sitting with Scott Vasic, our vice president, and I remember 2 years ago, we were in Shanghai, China, and one gentleman said he'd like to increase his business by $10 million in the year. And we discussed these 4 steps to planting those seeds. And we kind of just left it with him. And it's not like you have to join us, or there's no big organization. We kind of just share it with you, and we encourage you to go off on your own and try it. And then if something good happens, then you have to take me out to a good French restaurant.
Okay.
The following year.
That's nice.
So we came back. Yeah, it's like that. We don't want to, we just want to share it with people and let them take it home and give it a try.
That's exactly the reason why I invited you here, to share and to spread the word around it. Let me summarize it for the ones who hear that whole topic the first time. I introduced our interview by saying it's contrary to every existing theory in economics we know so far, because also on the show I tell people how to build up image, to plan, or as you say, imprint something in the mind of their peer group. But what you say is that actually everything I see is my personal truth. So I interpret something in it, like the dog sees a chewing toy and the person sees a pen who can write with. So the emptiness is actually what I read in your book, which really intrigued me, was it's the potential within a thing, a word, an emotion, that everybody of us deals differently with it. The thing which is so amazing for me, and that what changed my point of view of a lot of things, was that definition of karma, which was a sentence I read in your book and just sticked in my mind. It was everything that you encounter comes from yourself. So this is actually what you said about the seed that you plant. There's a very nice summary of it, I think, from Jessica Kung in your book. She said, the idea is kind of gardening. So you purposely plant the kind of future you want by putting imprints in your own mind. So this is the big difference in everything I taught my audience so far. So you don't say put the seed or the imprint in the mind of somebody else, but in yourself. So just let us go in the practical direction. When you say, or your book, the governing theme of the book is, if you want to make money, give it away to others. How does that function? Because everybody would now say, what did you say? Giving it away just makes me more rich. Okay, that's a nice thought, but it it's not realistic. Tell me how you made it with your company, and how others who work with your method are successful with it.
Good. I think, for example, you can think of, I went to a movie yesterday. I have an old lady that I like to take out on Christmas. Mm-hmm. She's 94, and wow. Take her to the movies, which is always a big journey for her.
Can imagine.
We have to get all the diapers ready, and but we went to the movies, and you can think of emptiness as the movie screen, the white movie screen, and then back in the little room behind us, there's a projector, and then there's a guy who loads movies into the projector, and so really, those are seeds that we plant in our mind. The world itself is a huge white movie screen. And then each one of us projects onto it a different reality. So if we could learn how to load a new movie into our minds, we would see a different world around us, and it's real, and it would be real. So in my company, for example, let's say I would like to start, and at the time we didn't really imagine we would become the largest in the world. We were just trying to make our first million, And, so the classic steps are four classic steps for planting a seed. And you can call it karma, or you could call it seeds in your mind, but it's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. And I prefer to use seeds around the world because we address many audiences. We just gave a program in Dubai for the diamond producers of the world. All the largest producers in the world were there. We just did a program for the mayor of Buenos Aires and his team. And it's funny, the mayor of Buenos Aires took me into his office afterwards, and he said, well, according to you, I could plant seeds in my mind, for example, to become president of my country. And I said, yeah. And he said, review with me the 4 steps for me to plant the seeds to become president of my country. And we went through them together. And he's a very unusual man. I found out later that he had been kidnapped before.
Wow.
And kept in a coffin. And I think he's extremely open to things that might change the world. And he tried it, and he was elected president. His name is Mauricio Macri, and he's now the president of Argentina and doing very well. And he's using these principles. And I think, so it's exciting. The 4 steps would be, for example, if I wanted to increase sales in my company
Mm-hmm.
or profits, first step of these ancient, it's called Shi Sampa Jorwa Tartuk in the ancient languages. And Shi means you have to choose some kind of goal you have in mind for 2019. Like in 2019, I would like my company to double in profits or sales. Mm-hmm. So that would be step number one. You say what it is you would like to achieve. And then step number two is very interesting, that to plant a seed, you must interact with another person. So you cannot plant a seed in a vacuum. You cannot sit in your office and plant a seed. You must select another person whom you know who would like to achieve a similar goal. So it's not possible to use this ancient modern system unless you choose another person to help. So there must be another person, kind of like an echo or something, or like a mirror. You need another person to plant a seed in your mind. So I would choose, for example, another person who would like to start a business. So I think, if I'm a business person listening to this podcast, I would be wary of someone who said, give money away and your business will increase. And I think a better way to put it would be help someone else to be successful. Help someone else to be financially successful in their business. Take some of your time to help another person. And that's the third step. We encourage people, like, once a week, take another person out for an hour to a coffee shop, maybe a younger person who's entrepreneur, who's trying to start their own business. Give them 1 hour of your time, completely gratis, completely free, and completely with the intention of making them successful.
Let me jump into this here, okay, because this is something I was asking myself, because this is something about mindset. When I take this one person out for a coffee and talk to it, when I have the mindset, okay, now I sit here with a person and I give it my time, so I will achieve my goals. Will it help? Or do I have to have the mindset, no matter what happens to me, I want this person to be successful? Because I think this is a major difference between the way you look at the situation.
Exactly, and I think it's a beautiful question. I get this question often. I remember a classic presentation we gave to business owners in Guangzhou, China, which is the largest city in the world. And these guys are tough Chinese. And one of them raised his hand and he said, well, but this seems a little selfish. If I'm inviting another person out for coffee, supposedly to help them with get their business started for free, but really in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, what will I get out of it? Or will I get something back?
Exactly.
And it's an interesting thing. I mean, it's hard to describe, and it's difficult to convey in a 1 hour interview. But what's happening when you plant a seed is that you are increasing the amount of wealth in the world. So in this system, the amount of wealth in the world, you can say the grand pizza of all world economy grows and shrinks according to the seeds in people's minds. So the idea of a zero-sum game where the pizza has 8 slices of a certain diameter and everyone gets a certain number of slices and then all the slices are gone doesn't apply to this theory of economics. You see, if I am kind and if I help you get your business started, if I spend my time for free, 1 hour a week, that creates seeds in my mind. And what's interesting is the power of those seeds doubles every 24 hours. So, I like to talk to people about an oak tree. The acorn, the seed of an oak tree, is 0.5 gram. And then the finished oak tree is about 400 kilos, 4,000 kilos. So that's how fast the energy of a seed doubles in physical nature. But inside the mind, it's much more powerful. So a well-planted seed, planted with great intention and with great love for the other person, desire for their success, will double in power every 24 hours. In our company, we doubled every 18 months for 19 years. And try to imagine hiring 100% more people every 18 months and training 100% more people every 18 months and distribution and the physical space for the company. What you have to do if you double every 18 months, it's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I mean, it's logistically, it's almost impossible to train 100%. If you have 1,000 people in your company and you have to train 1,000 more in 18 months, it's almost impossible, but it happens. So what's interesting is that if your intention is benevolent, I want you to be successful, and you both succeed, you see, and you really cannot prevent that process. You will succeed whether you want to or not. And you can't, you can feel guilty or selfish, but it's not selfish, you see, because by nature, you must help another person be successful for your company to grow. It's not a question of like corporate charity. People ask me on a plane, what do you do? And I explain for 5 minutes and they say, oh, you're into corporate charity or you're into corporate ethics. And I'm like, no. This is the engine that drives your financial success. It's not a small room on the third floor where a lonely guy is sitting and donating 2% of the company's money. It's not that. It's that it's a mindset that 10,000 people in our company had, and they are working really hard to help the people around them and plant these seeds. So it's an amazing. Rather than being selfish, the net result is that everyone becomes successful who touches it. So even if we divide a company into 5 parts. 5. There's investors, there's partners, business partners, there's suppliers, there's employees, and then there's customers. And in this system, you would divide those 5 into like separate groups. And for example, in my company, the goal for the investors was to give them back more money than we agreed to.
Wow.
You see?
Unusual.
Yeah. No, and imagine if you keep that up for 19, 20 years, how do your investors feel about you? Or what's their willingness to help you grow? If you commit to pay them back 10% or 15% in a year, and then you come back to them with 17, 18, 20%, and you say, this is a gift, this is we've made much more money than anyone expected. And
how can a company which is, let's say, almost broke because they just didn't succeed in economics reasons or whatever, and they have the goal, to maybe double their profit or at all gain profit next year. In what you just said means that they have to give away money first of all to gain money, but when they don't have it, what should they do in this example?
I like to give the example of this mafia guy. In fact, I was in an Eastern European country, which we will not name, and a guy brought about 20 of his employees, and afterwards he met me at a restaurant, and he said, frankly, I'm in the mafia, and we do all this illegal stuff, and but I like your talk, and I feel
lucky you.
Well, that's a story, and he said he felt guilty, about doing everything dishonestly, and if he wanted to make a small change, what we agreed was, he had 20 companies. I said, give me control of one company. Let me run it according to these principles for a year. And if it makes more money, then slowly change your other companies. So what we encourage people to do, let's say your company's not doing well, I don't think any reasonable business owner would suddenly restructure the whole company based on these principles. I don't think that would be responsible. I think take a 5%, department of your division of your company, which is what he did, and run it according to these principles for a year, and see if your sales increase, see if the profits increase wildly, and then slowly shift over other parts of your company. So he did for a year. And I remember the night I was in Hamburg, and I was in my hotel room, and there was this bang on the door. And I opened the door, and he was there, and he was quite agitated. And
Okay.
I actually backed up in the room because I was thinking, what do I do if he gets violent, And
Oh boy. Mm.
I backed up in the room, and he came after me, but he was excited, and he said, that division that we ran according to your principles has doubled last year.
Wow.
And I'm changing over another division,
Oh my. So he was angry. Has he changed his whole company system though?
Yeah, so I think I think that's reasonable, and it's not that you give away money. I would say a lot of the seed planting is how much of your heart and how much of your effort you put into it. Writing a check is almost no seeds. Taking a younger business person under your wing and mentoring them as you would your son or daughter, for example, and just helping them to be successful over a period of time and really committing some of your time. That's what we're talking about.
Well, let me ask you here something. When we talk about marketing and like being on this show and for me providing that podcast to my audience is a content marketing thing. So is it also giving, is it in terms of planting seeds? Is it the right method to do?
Oh, it's fantastic. And again, it really depends on your motivation. You see, two people can take the same action. Two people can mentor another person, or two people can help another company to increase their marketing, to sharpen their brand image, which is what you're doing. So, it depends. A lot of the stuff, because seed planting is taking place inside the mind, intention directly affects the seed planting area of the mind because they're neighbors, so less than what you say, less than what you do, how you feel about helping other people directly plant seeds in a neighboring part of the mind.
I see.
So if you are, and there's 51 mental functions of the mind in the ancient scriptures. I was just translating them yesterday. And so it really is the case that the part of the mind which feels motivation for helping another person, I really am going to make this young entrepreneur successful. And then the part of the mind where the seeds are planted are next door to each other.
Yeah, I see.
So if the more you can, when you're doing your podcast for people, the more you can wish them well, and which will naturally affect how effectively you do the podcast for them, then the greater the seeds are planted. But if you do it unconsciously, if you help people unconsciously, without strong motivation for their success, then the seeds are not very powerful.
And let me also ask a question. If I have the intention to do a podcast, because this is also why people approach me, my company, they say, okay, I want to do a podcast because we want to make money with it. And not we want to do a podcast because we want to give our expertise to others to make the world better. Is that, just double check if what you said before, this is a different intention. The intention is ego-centered, the first one, and the other one is centered to the world. So which seed is stronger?
All of us are egocentric. We all comb our own hair in the morning.
True.
And we all zip up our own pants in the morning. And So it's our nature, you know, and you can't really escape that nature. But what happens in this system is miraculous, because if the motivation for providing podcasts is that I want to be successful as an example for other people, you see, I want to be successful planting these seeds by helping someone else. I would like to be so successful that people all over the world are asking me, how did you do that? And so there's a way to be egocentric and be kind at the same moment, which is probably the way it has to be. I want to be a huge success. People listen to me because the president of Argentina uses our, you know, people listen to me because I'm successful. And so it's not a contradiction. In fact, it's an important method. Think to yourself, I would like to be successful so that I can help people around me, so people will be attracted. You know, if I'm overweight and I want to lose weight, and I go on a certain diet to lose weight, and suddenly I've lost, 10 kilos or something, then of course my friends are going to come to me and say, what's your secret? How is it you did that? And if I'm still overweight and I say I have a cool new diet I want everyone to follow, then they're all going to say, but you're still overweight, you know, and it's the same principle.
You know what is funny? Why I'm just laughing at the moment, because what you just say is the definition of an influencer, you know, for the whole social media branch, which is so funny because this is how persons succeed so well on YouTube and Instagram and other platforms. It's really interesting when you see it this way.
Yeah, in a way, what we train people to do is it's your social responsibility to be successful yourself, so that you can help other people be successful. If you don't have a system that you can share with other people, then you can't help other people. You see what I mean?
Absolutely.
And to prove that system is your job. So we really encourage our clients to be as successful as possible, and then share it with other people. So really, you can satisfy your egocentric self, which needs to be satisfied, and with the right frame of mind, it can become a true form of love, you know. Which is
so that means actually that to become a really successful brand, you need the conscious what you alter or transform in the world of your peer group, your customers, or your employees to be able to plant these strong seeds.
Yeah, I think in the end, the only way you can build a brand is to have a product that you believe will help the world.
Absolutely.
Will do something in the world. And if then branding becomes a pleasure. So, and if you want to go deeper, which is difficult, okay, in a 1-hour podcast, but the way that I like to take the example of, there's a very famous movie actor, I guess I shouldn't mention his name, who came to me, and I've been helping him. And he married a very successful woman, a model who had a big mole on her cheek. So you guys can figure it out. And this woman became so famous in America that young ladies were going to their hairdressers and asking them if they could draw a mole on their cheek, right where she had one.
Yeah.
And because everyone found it attractive. And you see, so beauty is really in the eye of the beholder, you see, and the perception of my brand by other people is also coming from seeds in my mind, you see. So I can have a good brand, I can have a good product, and people just don't buy it, and they're just not interested. And then I can have a weak product, and then suddenly people go crazy over it, it's not related to the quality of the product. It's related to the seeds that you plant, and those seeds are planted for branding. Those seeds are planted in an interesting way, and this is a very specific karma, is by celebrating other people's successes. So as a business owner, let's say I'm in the jewelry business. Every year we have these huge jewelry shows. Basel, Switzerland, I don't know, 2,000 companies come. 2,000 companies are showing their diamond jewelry in these huge halls in Basel. And so you can walk into those halls with two different, feelings in your heart. Number one, you can say, I want to see what the competition is doing so I can kill them, And,
Yeah.
and people, taking selfies at those exhibitions is very popular because you're standing in front of your competitors, showcase, and you're stealing their designs by taking a selfie.
I see.
There's a competitive state of mind. And then there's what we try to train people to do who want to improve their branding. Find the other company at the Basel exhibition who is doing amazing jewelry design and who's doing amazing pieces, and take the owner out to dinner and tell them how amazing they are and how much you admire them. And this plants seeds for your brand to be more accepted and to be universally accepted. And the exercise turns out to be a great pleasure. Someone that you've been jealous of for years, and someone that you felt of them as an enemy or a competitor for years, and then suddenly you become peers and you become friends, and you take them out to dinner and you just tell them how cool they are. And that emotion of thinking that other people are cool, looking around your world to find cool things that you can celebrate rather than being jealous, is actually the karmic seed for successful brand.
Well, what you're talking about is the positive energy you just provide around you.
Yeah, and it's I always say, if the whole seed thing is wrong, and if none of it is true, and if none of it works, the worst thing that happened is you had a good dinner with another human being.
I like the way you see the world. That's so cool. Let me ask you a question here again, because it just popped in my mind when you were talking about planting seeds for your customers. What comes first, if there is a first? As a business owner building up a brand, do you have to make your customers love your brand first, or your employees?
Oh, that's a good question. And, I wrote a book called Karmic Management, and I think we divided it into 5 parts. Those 5 parts, partners, business partners, investors, customers, employees, and suppliers. And what's interesting is, let's say, for example, I had a supplier in the jewelry company who was giving me too much gold in the gold. You see, so gold is not pure gold. It's 14 karat or 18 karat. Pure gold is too soft to use for jewelry, so you mix it with other metals. And he wasn't mixing in enough other metals, but he didn't know. He didn't notice it, but he was bleeding his company, the 3 or 4% a year. He was losing because he wasn't mixing gold right. He was giving me too much gold.
Oh, I see.
And, so I pointed it out to him, and he thought I was crazy, And I said, no, I want to take care of my suppliers. I want my suppliers to be successful because it affects the perception of my customers of my brand. You see, so a good seed planted with one of those 5 groups, say with a supplier, will come back to you through your customer. So it's not like you do a good deed towards your supplier and then suddenly you have more good suppliers. You can plant a seed with your supplier, and then suddenly your investor is giving you more money. You see? So the how seeds come back to you, how they open, transcends those divisions in your life. So you might celebrate a competitor at work, and suddenly your marriage becomes better.
That was a cool trick, actually.
Yeah,
A lot of people will like.
No, but if your office and if your home are coming from the same center of your mind, then it makes sense, you see?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's all. So
it's relationships in every field of your life. That's true. You were talking about 4 steps. So the first one was you have to have a goal, then you have to choose a person you want to help, and then you have to help to achieve that person's goals together. What is the 4th step?
Yeah, so 3 is once a week you take them out for coffee, just an hour and not more. Okay. Because if you commit to more, you will stop. We're all too busy. So but stick to it. Stick to it. It's like gardening. You plant in the spring, you reap in the fall. So don't expect it to happen the next day. You have to keep it up over at least a few months before those seeds are going to ripen. Now the 4th one is the coolest one. I did have an interview with a major newspaper. And they said, of all the 4 steps, what's the most important one? And I said, oh, that's the 4th one. Because many, many people in the world, we do good things for other people. All of us, all day long, we do good things for other people. Maybe not very consciously, but we all help other people. We all do things for others. But we don't see these fantastic results coming back. A $250 million diamond company or something. We don't see that happening. And the reason for that is that mental seeds require tending. After you've planted them with the first 3 steps, then you've got all these seeds in your mind. And they're like watermelon seeds under the ground in the spring, And then they're going to need watering. And they're going to need fertilizer, and they're going to need sunlight. They need care. And that's the big secret, And so the 4th step, which is a very beautiful step, is that before you go to bed, it's traditional to do a meditation before you go to bed, because then it cooks in your mind all night while you sleep. And you think about the kindness that you paid to another person today. So as you put your head down on the pillow, and you don't sit with your legs crossed, right? You lay down and you put your head on the pillow. And when my teacher taught me this, it was very funny. We were on a couch in his Lama, quarters at the monastery. He's like, lay down. We're doing a special meditation. I'm like, we don't do that. And he said, no, this one you have to fall asleep. I said, we're never supposed to fall asleep during meditation. No. In this meditation, you have to fall asleep during the meditation. And the idea is that as you fall off to sleep, you think of the kindnesses you've done to others today, or you think of the kindnesses you've seen people do to each other, and you just be happy. You just celebrate. That warms up the seed, and it puts fertilizer on the seed. So let's say I took a young entrepreneur out for coffee 3 days ago. Then I purposely bring that image back up in my mind, and I think about all the details of like what kind of coffee did they order, and what did they put in their coffee, and how did they smile, and how did I talk, and what words did I use. And this review of a good seed in your heart warms it up, and it grows much, much faster. And so I think what mostly happens with people is we all like to help other people. We all do good things for other people. But those seeds are just sitting there in the mind, and they're not fertilized, they're not watered. And traditionally, it's called tartuk in the ancient books. And it's a practice where you purposely try to appreciate your own goodness. And it feels a little uncomfortable for most people. It feels like, oh, I'm being proud or something, or I'm praising myself. But it's a very necessary part of life that we appreciate it when we do something kind.
Absolutely. When I have coaching clients, they get from me a diary for, not just 1 year, but you have books where you have a diary for 5 years. So you have one day, and you see how the years before were at that day. And I also tell them at the end of the day, you just put in there what you did today positively for your branding, just regarding that coaching. And this is so so cool actually when they call me years later and they say, well, today 2 years ago I just, as you would say, planted that seed, like we brought up the new campaign or a new website or a new channel, whatever, and today we reached this and that through it. So this is very nice to see how it develops and to have that in front of your eyes. So thank you that you express it here again.
Yeah, it's a very, we also have a college in the United States. We built a college with our profits, and we train trainers here. In fact, there's a term starting in a week or two, and people come from 20 or 25 countries, and we downstairs in the college we train them. Upstairs, we have about 15 people who are just translating the ancient classics. So we have a project for 31 years where we find ancient books in libraries around the world and we digitalize them and we put them up for free online. And then we translate them. And so I think this is also, that there's a constant inflow of these great ideas. We call it idea mining. We mine ancient literature. We mine ancient traditions for this knowledge, for these ideas. So the idea that you hit on, right, with your diary, with your 5-year diary, is actually well documented 1,700 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So
amazing.
Everything we do is drawn from those classics. Yeah.
Let me address something that you just said before about watering the plants. This is so important to have that in mind, that a plant needs water every day over his whole lifetime. When we transfer that into business life, it means, because this is something that lots of companies I see don't succeed on, they just do one campaign and then they think, okay, now everything would change because of this ongoingly. But they have to be consistent, like doing, compare it to a podcast show, dear audience. It's once a week or every day or whatever you're, how often you do it. It's you have to do it consistently. And this is also what you just said about the seed and caring for it. Otherwise, it will die. Will it die, or is it able that the seed will die in some day?
I had an interesting experience. I was asked to translate for the Dalai Lama's doctor, and he's an incredible physician of ancient medicine. And we were sitting there, and he came to talk, and then I was translating for him, and then he was talking about these seeds and how long will they survive without, and he said something interesting. He said in their medicinal theory, your health today, let's say it's December, is absolutely determined by what you did in August. You see? So when they treat a patient, they are looking back 3 or 4 months. Were you exhausted 3 or 4 months ago? Did you have a rough period in your marriage or in your business 3 or 4 months ago? You see? And this idea that you might have to do a campaign, a marketing campaign this month, and then maybe those effects will not take place for 3 or 4 months until months after you finish the campaign. That's a big concept in seed planting. And I think, especially Americans, we want instant results. We're just not used to doing something and waiting months for it to come out. Now, seeds, interesting. If you plant a seed, according to this ancient principles, these ancient literature, it will grow, and you cannot stop it. You see, if you do a kindness to another person, if you help another person succeed, then you will be more successful. Now, the problem is the seed might lie dormant for 10 years. And that's very common. And there's a very interesting argument about why seeds cannot be destroyed is called justice, universal justice. Once you have done a kindness, something good must happen to you. Once you have hurt a competitor, for example, and something bad must happen to you. It just might take time. It might be 3 months later, it might be 4 months later. So there's this big emphasis on understanding that the world is coming from how you treat others. Yeah. And then understanding that if you don't water those seeds, you're going to have to wait a long time for them to open. And they cannot be destroyed. I mean, no goodness is left unrewarded. And that's just a basic principle of the universe. You cannot do a good deed and not get a good result. But if you don't know about this trick of, we call it coffee meditation because my teacher taught it to me over coffee. Before you sleep, never, ever think of your problems, because they will just roil in your mind.
The whole night. Yeah.
Yeah. And always be disciplined, which is the definition of meditation. Be disciplined enough to tell your own mind to be happy before you go to sleep, and be happy about something kind you've done or you've seen someone else do. And that this is so things like eating and sleeping are big practices in this tradition. Eating properly, sleeping properly, relaxing properly are also important business strategies.
Yeah, that's true, because when you don't treat yourself right, how should others do it instead? It's just, yeah, absolutely. Geshe Michael, I'm so excited about this interview. I thank you so much about the insights and backgrounds and great stories to understand what the topics are about and how we can use it and transform it and in the business life. Because when most people think about karma and management, they say, okay, these are so far away topics, they cannot match at all. But I saw today, and you proved it again for me, that everything can be linked, and you just did it. And thank you so much for doing this and bring this into the world. And I would like to know how I can help you and help our audience to get to know more about you. So
I think the best thing is what I really, really, really encourage people to do is give it a small try, like the mafia guy.
Okay.
Give it a small try in one ad campaign, or one product or one customer. Try these 4 steps. And if it works out, then expand. I don't think any smart business person should change their whole business because of one talk on a podcast. But give it a small try, do a small experiment, and if it works, expand it. And then you have to take me out to dinner when I see you.
Okay, that's a deal. So what you mentioned was you wrote books. I will link them in the show notes. What else? Are there seminars around the world or groups where people can meet and exchange? Tell us a little bit about it.
I think, so basically there's a book for everything you might want. So there's a book called The Diamond Cutter. If you are interested in starting a business, if you're an entrepreneur. There's a book called Karmic Management, which is good if you already own a business, but you want it to shine. There's a book called Karma of Love, which is 100 issues, relationship issues at home, and their answers according to this ancient seed system. There's a book called How Yoga Works, which is actually a commentary on the ancient Yoga Sutra, but as a novel, as a story. So it's fun to read. And if you have health problems of any kind, and you don't have to be a person who wants to do yoga. I personally, I do it, but I hate it.
Okay.
You can study, you can read that book. It's just a novel, but it will help you improve your health drastically. I'm 66. I do ballet.
Really?
I out headstand everybody in the yoga classes, and these seeds are also creating your body, so you can improve your health dramatically. So those are books. Diamond Cutter if you want to start a business. Karmic Management if you'd like to pep up your business. Karma of Love if you'd like to use these principles in your personal relationships. And then How Yoga Works if you have health problems and you'd like to fix them. So I'd say those four. And then there's a website called Diamond Cutter Institute. And this is the training institute that we go around the world constantly. We visit, I think, 35 cities every year, all over the world. And definitely we're going to be near you or your readers, your listeners. Like every year we're in Germany. In what month? Normally in November. But we basically in every major country of the world, we have offices, and we do events. So you could check the schedule of events for Diamond Cutter Institute. And then I would really encourage people to come see an event. And it's just really cool.
I can imagine, especially when this good vibes go around and people tell their success stories, how it affected their life. I just cannot imagine how cool that whole day
it's
should
just
be.
Fun, and I think it's a good investment. You spend an hour or 2 hours, and I think it would change the rest of your life. And in my case, it made me wildly successful. We have many companies. I own many companies, and they're all crazy successful. And for me, it was just an amazing, thing, a miracle in my life that I was taught these things, and should give it a try.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time and for the great insights. And I wish you already in advance, in a few days it will be, a great start in a wonderful new year.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and I really appreciate it.
Me too. Thanks so much. Und damit sind wir auch am Ende unserer heutigen 50. Jubiläumsepisode. Ich weiß nicht, wie es dir geht, aber ich bin immer noch fasziniert von dem Thema und ich hoffe, ich konnte dich ein klein wenig damit anstecken. Und tu es doch einfach so, wie Michael Roach es vorgeschlagen hat. Nimm dir einen kleinen Bereich aus deinem Unternehmen, eine Kampagne meinetwegen, und setz dieses Prinzip einmal in echt um und schau, was passiert. Nicht alles sofort umstellen, das wird nicht funktionieren. Schritt für Schritt und testen, ausprobieren und am Ende sehen, welche Samen, die wir gepflanzt haben, wenn sie denn richtig über eine lange Zeit gewässert werden, auch wirklich funktionieren und sprießen. Und ein wichtiger Punkt, den ich ja auch in all meinen anderen Episoden immer wieder betone: achte darauf, was ist der Nutzen, den ihr in eurem oder mit eurem Unternehmen, mit eurer Dienstleistung, eurer Zielgruppe stiftet, Mitarbeitern, Investoren und auch potenziellen Kunden. Denn wenn ihr das für euch einmal verstanden habt, was ihr verändert, was ihr am Ende für eine Transformationsleistung, wenn wir ein bisschen in das Spirituelle hineingehen, leistet, dann seid ihr auf dem Weg, den Geshe Michael Roach heute auch vorgestellt hat, nämlich mit dem Perspektivenwechsel auf, was biete ich anderen und kann damit eine einen ganz anderen Samen pflanzen, um es mal in seiner Sprache zu sagen, und das Karma für einen arbeiten zu lassen. Ich bin sehr, sehr gespannt, was du aus diesen Informationen machst, und wenn du Interesse hast, dich mit mir und den anderen, die da mal ausprobieren möchten, auszutauschen und dran zu bleiben, vielleicht Motivation und Ideen und Support brauchen, dann komm bitte in unsere Facebook-Gruppe, die ist dir in den Shownotes verlinkt, und das ist ein geschlossener Bereich, ein geschützter Bereich, und da gib einfach mal deine Ideen zu dem Thema rein, und ich freue mich sehr darüber, wenn wir im regen Austausch dazu sind. Und in dem Sinne, starte in ein tolles Jahr 2019 mit mal ganz anderen Gedanken zu dem Thema. Ciao, deine Carmen.